If you're watching my channel and you're extremely racist, I know there's a lot of you, you know, we have a big tent here. Your ideology sucks, man. It just does. It's not good for you either. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's the anti-Semitism is the full socialism. They keep like gesturing at caring about these real points, but they never actually do. They want Americans, so they mean like white Americans, to be better educated, but then they exclusively support people and policies who make education worse. Like the reason why American education's tanking. They celebrate the policies that are done in the states that have the lowest educational scores for everyone, white, black, whatever. They don't give a shit, you know? They claim that they hate the work culture that Silicon Valley presses on its workers, and they don't want, you know, white people to be subjected to those workplace conditions, but then they exclusively support people and policies that make those conditions worse. They're anti-union, they're pro like unfettered business power, they're anti-regulation, they're anti-welfare state, they're anti like everything. They literally don't believe anything other than making life worse for non-white people. White people's lives can be made worse too. They don't give a shit about that. No white supremacist ever went out there and made life better for any white people. They do not give a about that. They exclusively want to make life worse for non-white people. If white people get dragged in on that, that's fine. As long as life is made worse proportionally for non-white people than it is for white people, they are completely on board with that. They do not care. It's insane. It's crazy. I can't, and this is the reason why fascism is designed to self-destruct. You know, its end is written in its beginning. It is an irrationalist ideology. It is not capable of sustaining itself because, as it turns out, maintaining a civilization is really difficult work, you know? Even if you went back to the Rome these dipshits love to care about, Rome was maintained, whatever form you want to imagine Rome taking, because it existed for thousands of years, maintained through an incredibly complicated, wide-reaching series of compromises and considerations that factored the interests and needs of a very, very diverse population. It was an empire. It contained a lot of people. There were black Roman emperors. There were black Roman citizens. The Romans cared more about whether you were a citizen or not than they did whether you were white or not. The concept of whiteness literally didn't exist back then. Certainly not as we understand it today. You know, the idea of like a white guy, like you'd be in Rome and you'd be like a white guy, and then there'd be like a brown guy, and that would be a brown guy. Not a thing. So civilizations built on ideologies like this are fundamentally unworkable. Why do they exist? Well, they mostly exist because the business class has to come up with something angry and desperate enough that it convinces people to not unite against them, right? Like in a world with so much abundance, how do you continue to justify, you know, like an obscene amount of wealth being held by the 1%, right? Like hundreds of billions of dollars in one man's, you know, collective assets, trillions of dollars hoarded offshore, sheltered, kept away from society, not allowed to enrich society. How do you tolerate this? The democratic mandate, if everyone was fully informed, by tomorrow, we could be rid of it. You know, we could abolish that inequality. So how do they convince us to not do that? Well, they have to create narratives that supersede the class war. They have to create, you know, fear and anxiety of immigration or whatever. But far more people die every year from need than anyone in America does from immigration. More people die from car accidents. More people die from heart disease that could be prevented with a better healthcare system or you know, far more people suffer from the class war than they do from the culture war, but they want us to talk about the culture war. And when I say culture war, by the way, the default position here is equality. You got to give a good argument as to why that's not the position. I don't think you're fighting in the culture war if you say like trans people ought to do such and such, like trans people are valid, whatever the hell. That's just the default, you know? You got to provide an argument against that. The default position is one of permissiveness. That's one of the American virtues, you know? The Constitution says what the government can do, not what the government can't do, because the implication, if the Constitution said what it can't do, would be that it can do whatever is not explicitly forbidden, which is not the case. The default position is liberty. Everything else has to be an argument.